History is not as settled as we might believe. An ancient computer found in a shipwreck, a hammer encased in million-year-old stone. These are the unexplained artifacts that defy our entire timeline. By the end of this journey, you will discover 25 objects that challenge everything we know about human achievement. How did a complex gear mechanism exist 2,000 years ago? What civilization could have mapped Antarctica without ice? This exploration uncovers secrets that could rewrite our past. What does it mean for our future if the oldest chapters of history are still missing? That lump of bronze, pulled from a shipwreck by a sponge diver, was initially dismissed as little more than junk. For decades, it sat in a museum, a crumbling, calcified mystery, waiting for the right eyes to see it for what it truly was. Then researchers began to peer inside, using ever more advanced imaging technology. They did not find a simple statue or a common tool. They found gears. Dozens of intricate, interlocking bronze gears, arranged with a precision that should not have existed for another millennium. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, a device so advanced it has been called the world's first analog computer. It was not just a calendar, it was a cosmic predictor. By turning a hand crank, an ancient user could calculate the movements of the sun and moon, predict lunar and solar eclipses, and even track the cycles of the Olympic Games. The most astounding part is a specific component known as a differential gear, a complex assembly that allows for the calculation of relative motions. This technology was thought to be an invention of the 17th century, not 200 years before the Common Era. How does such sophisticated engineering simply vanish from history? The existence of this device forces us to reconsider an entire era, suggesting that the scientific landscape of the ancient world was far more advanced and its losses far more profound than we ever dared to believe. It stands as a haunting question made of bronze and genius, a single surviving piece from a library of lost knowledge. While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals a mind-boggling mastery of mechanics, another discovery from the ancient world suggests a completely different kind of knowledge, one that seems to flicker with a literal spark of electricity. In 1936, amidst the ruins of a Parthian village near Baghdad, workers uncovered a seemingly unremarkable clay jar. It was about the size of a man's fist, sealed with asphalt and containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. To the untrained eye, it was just another piece of ancient pottery, perhaps a container for sacred scrolls. But when a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig studied the object, a startling hypothesis began to form. He realized that if this jar were filled with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or wine, the chemical reaction between the electrolyte and the two different metals could produce a small but measurable electric current. This was the Baghdad Battery. The implications are as shocking as the current it might have generated. The Parthian Empire, which existed from around 200 years before the Common Era to 200 years after, was not known for electrical engineering. Yet here was a device that perfectly mimics the basic principles of a galvanic cell. What could they have used it for? Some researchers have proposed it was a power source for electroplating, a method of depositing a thin layer of gold onto silver objects, a practice known in the region. Others wonder if the subtle tingle of electricity had a ceremonial or medicinal purpose, perhaps used by priests to create a sense of awe, or by healers attempting to treat ailments. The most profound question, however, is not what this single jar was for, but what it represents. Was it a one-off experiment, a lucky accident that was never replicated? Or was it a surviving fragment from a much broader and now completely lost understanding of electrical science. If something as fundamental as a battery was known, even in a limited way, what other innovations have been completely erased from our historical record? This humble clay pot challenges the quiet assumption that our ancestors' path to knowledge was a straight and simple line, suggesting instead that there may have been many flickering lights in the darkness, most of which went out long before our modern era began. From the silent hum of potential electricity, we find another mystery that speaks in a language no one can understand. Tucked away in a vault at Yale University is a book that has defied every attempt to read it for over 500 years. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a handwritten codex from the early 15th century. Its pages a gallery of the utterly perplexing. You will find illustrations of plants that do not exist in any known botanical record, their roots and leaves twisting into impossible shapes. There are intricate astronomical charts showing constellations no one can identify, and strange circular diagrams populated by tiny, unclothed figures bathing in interconnected, fluid-filled tubes. Every single one of these bizarre images is accompanied by a flowing script, a unique alphabet of characters and words that forms a language completely unknown to modern linguistics. This is not a code that simply needs a key. It is a system that appears to be a genuine language, yet it matches nothing we have ever seen. The manuscript takes its name from Wilfred Voynich, a book dealer who acquired it in 1912, but its mystery is far older. Since its rediscovery, it has become a siren call for the world's best cryptographers, top code breakers from both world wars. The very minds who cracked sophisticated military ciphers have turned their formidable skills to this ancient book and walked away completely baffled. Their consistent failure has spawned countless theories. Is it an elaborate and meaningless hoax crafted to deceive a wealthy patron? Could it be an encoded book of alchemical secrets, its true meaning hidden behind a veil of cipher? Or is it something even more profound, a lone surviving document from a culture that has otherwise vanished without a trace, its knowledge and world you locked away in plain sight? The pages seem to offer a glimpse into a complete and complex system of thought, a whole way of seeing the world that is just beyond our reach. This is more than a puzzle, it is a direct challenge to our arrogance. It sits there, a tangible object from a known time, yet it whispers secrets we cannot begin to hear, forcing us to confront the haunting possibility that entire chapters of human thought may be written in a language we have forgotten how to read. A book of unreadable secrets is one thing, but a tool found in the wrong layer of time is another matter entirely. In 1936, a family strolling along the banks of the Red Creek near London, Texas, noticed an odd piece of stone with a sliver of wood jutting out. It was a curiosity, something that did not quite belong. When they cracked the rock open, they found not a fossil, but a hammer. This was not a rusted, primitive tool. It looked remarkably modern, with a well-formed wooden handle and a solid iron head, yet it was completely encased in a solid lump of stone. This object, now known as the London Hammer, immediately presented an impossible riddle. Geologists who examined the concretion determined that the stone itself was from the Cretaceous period, a layer of rock formed over 100 million years ago. That is a time when the last dinosaurs walked the Earth, tens of millions of years before any modern human ancestor is supposed to have existed. The hammer itself only deepens the mystery. The iron of the head is of a startling purity, lacking the bubbles and slag inclusions common in older ironworking, and its chemical composition is unusual. The wooden handle is partially coalified, turned to coal through a natural process, yet it has not completely decayed over the immense span of time it should have been buried. Skeptics offer a more conventional explanation. They suggest the hammer is a miner's tool from the 1800s that was simply lost. Over time, dissolved minerals in the water could have precipitated around it, forming a hard, stone-like concretion that mimicked much older rock. This process, known as concretion, can happen relatively quickly in the right conditions. Yet, for those who study the artifact, this explanation does not fully settle the debate. The specific geological context of its discovery continues to fuel questions. If the hammer is only a few hundred years old, how did it become so perfectly and solidly embedded within ancient strata? The London hammer forces a simple, bewildering question. How does a seemingly modern object find its way into a chapter of Earth's history written long before humanity's prologue? It is a concrete, physical anomaly that does not fit, a single, stubborn fact that challenges the comfortable timeline of our past and dares us to consider who or what might have been here long before us. Deep within a tomb at Saqqara, a simple wooden bird lay undisturbed for over 2,000 years. Discovered in 1898, it was catalogued as a child's toy or perhaps a ceremonial hawk, a common symbol of divinity, and then largely forgotten. But this was no ordinary bird. Its design is strikingly aerodynamic, with wings that are perfectly angled for lift and a fuselage that bears an uncanny resemblance to a modern glider or aircraft. It lacks the legs and feet you would expect on a bird figurine, and its tail is not horizontal like a bird's, but vertical like the stabilizer on an airplane. This is the Saqqara Bird, an artifact from around 200 years before the Common Era that seems to defy its own time. The mystery truly takes flight when you move beyond its static form. Decades after its discovery, a skilled model maker constructed a scaled-up, weighted replica of the Saqqara Bird. When launched, the model did not simply fall to the ground. It soared. It demonstrated remarkable gliding capabilities, able to fly for considerable distances with impressive stability, provided it was equipped with the one thing the original is missing, a small horizontal stabilizer on its vertical tail. This single addition, an element that could have been part of a separate, now lost piece, completes a highly functional aerodynamic design. So, what are we to make of this? The mainstream interpretation holds firm that it is a stylized bird, possibly a votive offering. Yet the evidence of its flight performance is difficult to dismiss outright. Could it be that an ancient artisan, through observation of birds or even sheer intuition, stumbled upon principles of aerodynamics? Or does this small wooden object hint at something far more radical, that the ancient Egyptians were experimenting with concepts of flight? It is a tantalizing thought. The Wright brothers achieved powered flight in 1903, but was the dream of soaring through the skies born in the workshops of Memphis 2,000 years earlier. The Saqqara Bird offers no inscriptions, no manuals, only its silent, elegant shape. It does not claim to be an airplane, but it floats on the air with a grace that asks us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient innovation. A wooden bird that defies gravity is one thing, but a spark plug found in a stone is a different kind of shock. In February 1961, 3 rock collectors were searching for geodes near Olancha, California. They found a promising lump and, hoping to see the crystalline interior typical of such stones, cracked it open. Inside was not a glittering cavity of quartz, but something entirely man-made. At its center was a circular inch of porcelain, surrounding a 2mm metallic core, all held within a hexagonal shell of corroded metal. It looked for all the world like a spark plug from a 20th century automobile. They called it the Coso Artifact. The true mystery began with the stone itself. The object was not merely lying in the dirt. It was completely encased within a hard, concretionary nodule that also contained what appeared to be fossilized shells and a prehistoric nail. When the find was examined by a geologist, the surrounding material was estimated to be 500,000 years old. This date places the formation of the stone nodule deep in the Pleistocene epoch, a time when early humans were only just beginning to use the most primitive stone tools. How could a component of internal combustion technology exist 500,000 years before its invention? The most common and logical explanation is that this is exactly what it appears to be, a spark plug from the 1920s, likely from a Champion brand model. Proponents of this view argue that the object was lost or discarded on the ground, and over a few decades, mineral-rich water percolated around it, rapidly forming a hard, stone-like concretion. This process can incorporate surrounding debris like old shells and rusted metal, creating the illusion of immense age. Yet, for those who first discovered it, the concretion was exceptionally hard and seemed to have formed in a single, ancient geological event. If this was a rapid mineralization, it would be a remarkable and rare occurrence. If it was not, then the implications are staggering. The Coso Artifact forces a direct confrontation with our methods for understanding the past. We rely on stratigraphy, the study of rock layers, to build our timeline of history. But what happens when an object appears in a layer where it simply cannot belong? Does it mean our dating is flawed, or could it mean our history is incomplete? This single, perplexing find does not offer answers, but it ignites a fundamental question about the reliability of the very ground beneath our feet and the stories we think it tells. High on the remote, wind-swept plateaus of the Bayan Kara Ula Mountains, a discovery was made in 1938 that would ignite one of the most enduring and controversial legends in all of fringe archaeology. A Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te was exploring a series of caves when he came upon a scene that was both baffling and eerie. Lining the cave walls were neat rows of stone discs, nearly a foot in diameter, each with a perfect hole in its center and a fine, double spiral groove that curled from the center out to the rim. They looked almost like ancient phonograph records carved from granite, but the strangeness did not end there. Scattered across the cave floor were the skeletal remains of the beings who might have used them. The skeletons were described as small and fragile, with unusually large skulls, unlike any known human tribe. These are the Dropa Stones, and their story only deepens from there. According to the controversial accounts that have circulated for decades, the discs were taken to a university for study. Researchers estimated their age at a staggering 12,000 years. Even more astonishing, the spiral grooves were not merely decorative. Under magnification, they were said to be actually composed of a continuous line of tiny, almost microscopic hieroglyphic characters, a written language pressed into the stone. A professor named Tsum Nui allegedly managed to decode the script, and the story it told was beyond anything found in conventional history books. The inscriptions told of a spacecraft that crashed in the inaccessible mountains. The survivors, a people who called themselves the Dropa, found themselves stranded on an alien world, unable to repair their vessel or return home. The stones were their recorded chronicle, a tragic account of their struggle for survival and their eventual integration with the local, less advanced human tribes. To add a layer of scientific intrigue, the stones were later analyzed and were said to contain a high concentration of cobalt and other metallic elements, as if the stone itself had been impregnated or treated in some advanced way. This entire narrative, of course, is a tapestry woven from extraordinary claims. Mainstream scholars universally dismiss the Dropa stones as a hoax, a modern fabrication, or a severe misidentification of known artifacts. There is no credible, verifiable evidence. The original discs cannot be produced for modern analysis. The key researchers like Tsum Nui are untraceable figures, and the entire story is riddled with inconsistencies. The skeletons were likely the remains of small-statured but entirely human mountain peoples. The stones themselves may have been nothing more than ceremonial by discs, common in ancient China, or even stone loom weights. So why does this story persist with such power? The Dropa Stones are a perfect symbol of a profound human desire, the longing to find evidence that we are not alone in the universe's long history. They represent the ultimate what if. What if a prehistoric crash landing truly happened? What if these stone discs are the sole, fragmented library of a lost, star-faring people? The mystery forces us to confront a difficult question. Where is the line between a beautiful, compelling legend and a hidden historical fact? The stones may ultimately be a myth, but they are a powerful one, reminding us that some mysteries are not about the objects themselves, but about the stories we need to believe. In a small museum in Peru, you can find a library of stone that tells a history no textbook would ever dare to print. These are the Ica Stones, thousands of andesite rocks meticulously engraved with scenes that defy our understanding of the ancient world. One moment you are looking at a human figure using simple tools, and the next, that same human is locked in combat with a towering triceratops. Another stone depicts a surgeon performing what appears to be a heart transplant, while another shows a man gazing through a telescope at celestial bodies. This is not a collection of fantasy art, but a body of work that its most famous proponent, a local physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera, claimed was the recorded knowledge of a pre-Inca civilization that vanished long ago. He began amassing these stones in the 1960s, building a personal museum that presented a world where humans and dinosaurs coexisted, and where medical and astronomical knowledge rivaled our own. The sheer volume of the stones is staggering, and their detailed, confident lines suggest a culture with a sophisticated understanding of its own place in a much different world. The problem, however, is that almost everything about them points to a modern origin. Geologists who have examined the stones note that the engravings show sharp, unweathered edges and a dark patina that sits on top of the rock's natural varnish, rather than being worn into it over centuries. The most damning evidence came from the very farmers who supplied the stones, who eventually confessed to creating and burying the artifacts to sell to eager tourists and collectors. They admitted to using modern tools to carve the images, often copying from comic books and textbooks. So why does the mystery persist? Why do these obvious forgeries continue to captivate and inspire countless people around the world? The answer lies not in the stones themselves, but in the deep human desire they tap into. They represent a powerful rebellion against the established narrative. For those who feel that mainstream history is too rigid or incomplete, the Ica Stones are a tangible challenge. They ask a thrilling and dangerous question. What if our timeline is completely wrong? What if a great civilization, possessing knowledge we would only rediscover millennia later, truly did walk with giants and map the stars? The stones are a fantasy, but they are a powerful one, proving that an artifact's greatest impact may not be in its historical truth, but in its ability to make us question the truths we think we know. A map drawn in 1513 should not contain the secrets it holds. In the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul sits a fragment of a larger world map created by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. He noted openly that his work was a compilation pieced together from 20 older source maps, some of which he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. On its own, this is a fascinating historical document. But when you look closer, the map reveals something that defies all logic of 16th century knowledge. It shows the eastern coast of South America with a startling accuracy, and it depicts a landmass to the south, connected to that continent, that bears a chilling resemblance to the coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. The impossible part is this: the map presents this southern land as a continuous, ice-free coastline. Antarctica has been buried under a mile-thick sheet of ice for millions of years. Modern science only confirmed its full, ice-free topography in the 1950s using sophisticated seismic soundings. So how could a Turkish admiral in the 1500s have access to a chart that shows a land last seen by human eyes in a prehistoric epoch? For those who believe the map is evidence of a lost civilization, the answer is clear. Piri Reis was working from source materials that preserved the geographical knowledge of an incredibly ancient, advanced seafaring culture, one that explored the entire globe at a time when Antarctica was free of ice. This culture, perhaps the legendary source of many myths, must have possessed cartographic skills that rivaled our own, and their knowledge was passed down through fragments, eventually finding its way to the Ottoman court. Skeptics, however, offer a different interpretation. They suggest the southern landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a speculative, composite coastline, a cartographer's guess linking South America to a mythical southern continent. They point out that the map contains known errors and is far from perfectly accurate. The resemblance to the true subglacial coastline, they argue, could be a simple coincidence, a lucky misinterpretation of distorted older maps. Yet, the coincidence is a profound one. The Piri Reis Map forces us to confront a gaping hole in our historical record. If it is not a lucky guess, then it is a ghost, a spectral outline of a world that existed long before recorded history began. This single piece of parchment is a testament to the terrifying idea that entire ages of human exploration and discovery could rise, flourish, and vanish, leaving behind nothing but a few lines on a map that would puzzle future generations. It asks us a simple, haunting question: how much have we truly forgotten? From a map that charts the unseen, we travel to a desert canvas of impossible scale. Etched onto the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Lines are a gallery of giants, only visible in their entirety from the sky. These geoglyphs, created by the Nazca culture over a 1,000-year period starting around 500 years before the Common Era, are not small sketches. They span hundreds of square kilometers, a vast network of lines, geometric shapes, and enormous figures that include a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a sprawling spider, and a whimsical monkey with a coiled tail. The sheer size is disorienting: a hummingbird that stretches over 300 feet, a lizard nearly 600 feet long. The mystery begins with their creation. How did the Nazca people achieve such perfect proportions and straight lines over such immense distances without ever being able to see their work from above? The engineering itself is a testament to their skill. They simply moved the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored sand beneath, creating a lasting contrast. By using simple stakes and ropes, they could plot out these massive designs with remarkable accuracy, a feat of large-scale surveying that is impressive even by modern standards. But the why is a far more difficult question. Were these lines a massive astronomical calendar, aligning with solstices and celestial events? Many researchers believe they were sacred pathways, walked during religious rituals to pray for water in this brutally dry landscape. The spider, for instance, is identified as a representation of a rain-bringing constellation. Yet, the most speculative theories point to the sky in a different way, suggesting the lines could be landing markers or signals for extraterrestrial visitors. This idea, while popular, is challenged by the simple fact that the Nazca people themselves could have appreciated the figures from the surrounding foothills, and the act of creation may have been as important as the final God's eye view. The true purpose may be a combination of all these things, a complex interplay of astronomy, religion, and community identity. The Nazca Lines are more than just pictures. They are a permanent monument to a culture's worldview, a puzzle written on the earth itself that asks us how a people without flight could conceive of art for the heavens. Workers hacking through the dense Costa Rican jungle in the 1930s did not expect to find art. They were clearing land for banana plantations in the Diquis Delta when their machetes struck something far harder than tree roots. As they cleared away the soil, they uncovered colossal stone spheres, perfectly round and impossibly smooth, some standing over 6 feet tall. These are the stone spheres of Costa Rica, hundreds of them scattered across the landscape, left behind by pre-Columbian cultures over 1,000 years ago. The spheres are monumental achievements in themselves, carved from incredibly hard stone like gabbro, as well as limestone and sandstone. Their near-perfect sphericity is baffling, especially for the largest examples that weigh several tons. How did ancient artisans, without the use of metal tools or modern measuring devices, achieve such geometric precision? They likely used a combination of meticulous hammering, controlled heating and cooling to fracture the stone, and endless polishing with sand. But the mystery only deepens when you consider their placement. Many of the spheres were found arranged in groups, forming straight lines, wide triangles, and vast parabolic curves across the ground. Some researchers believe these configurations were astronomical markers, aligning with the rising and setting of the sun or key stars during solstices, effectively turning the landscape into a giant celestial calendar. Others argue they were powerful status symbols, signifying the authority and wealth of a chief or a community, their size and perfection a display of control over both labor and resources. Perhaps the most captivating theory is that these groupings were meant to represent constellations, mapping the heavens not on parchment, but on the Earth itself with massive stone planets. Yet their purpose remains as solid and unreadable as the stone itself. Why go to such extraordinary effort? What cultural idea was so important that it required permanent expression in a form of such perfect, silent geometry? The spheres do not answer, they only persist. Their creation was a feat of engineering, but their meaning is a ghost, a pattern we can no longer decipher. They stand as a testament to a different way of seeing the world, where art, astronomy, and power were all carved into the same perfect shape and left for the jungle to guard. The deep in the earth of Romania, a worker's shovel struck something strange in 1974. Buried alongside the ancient bones of a mastodon, an animal that has been extinct for thousands of years, was a heavy, wedge-shaped object made of metal. This was the Aiud aluminum wedge, and its discovery would ignite a debate that cuts to the very heart of our historical timeline. The object itself seems almost mundane, resembling a heavy tool head or a piece of machinery. But scientific analysis revealed its impossible secret. The wedge is composed of a complex alloy, predominantly aluminum, a metal that does not occur naturally in its pure form. Humanity did not develop the industrial process to smelt pure aluminum until the 1820s. Yet, this object was found in a geological layer dated to around 11,000 years ago, a time when human societies were nomadic hunter-gatherers, working only with stone, wood, and bone. The immediate, logical explanation is contamination. Skeptics propose it is a fragment from a much more recent piece of equipment, perhaps a tooth from a modern excavator or a drill bit that somehow fell into the older strata, creating a false association with the mastodon remains. This process, where a newer object is displaced into an older layer, is a known issue in archaeology. Yet the context of its discovery continues to give researchers pause. It was found under 35 feet of sediment, deeply embedded and seemingly undisturbed for a very long time. If it was a modern intrusion, how did it sink so deep and position itself so perfectly among relics of a lost age? This single, unassuming piece of metal presents a direct challenge. It forces us to ask whether our understanding of ancient technology is fundamentally incomplete. Could a forgotten culture have discovered a method for creating advanced alloys, a knowledge that was lost in some global catastrophe? Or does the wedge point to an even more radical possibility, that our planet has seen visitors or civilizations that rose and fell long before our own recorded history began? The Aiud wedge offers no easy answers, only a silent, metallic question buried in the earth, waiting for a solution that may never come. A farmer's plow struck stone in the Minnesota soil, uncovering a slab that would ignite a debate lasting over a century. In 1898, Swedish immigrant Olof Öhman was clearing land on his farm near Kensington when he unearthed a flat stone, roughly 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, tangled in the roots of a tree. Its surface was covered in strange, angular markings. When scholars were called in, they identified the carvings as runes, the ancient alphabet of the Norse. The inscription, dated 1362, told a harrowing story. It spoke of a party of 8 Swedes and 22 Norwegians on a journey of exploration from Vinland far to the west. The text describes a tragic outcome, with 10 men red with blood and dead, a haunting account of an attack, perhaps from the very native peoples the inscription mentions. This was the Kensington Runestone, and it suggested that Norse explorers had ventured deep into the heart of North America, a full 130 years before Columbus set sail. The immediate question was staggering. Could Vikings have canoed their way into the American Midwest? The stone became a sensation, a potential relic that could rewrite the history of the continent. Yet the controversy began almost immediately. Linguists pointed out troubling anachronisms in the runic text, arguing that some of the runes and the grammatical forms used were not consistent with the 14th century, but instead reflected a much more modern understanding of the language. Geologists debated the weathering of the stone, with some insisting the carvings showed signs of being far too fresh to be 600 years old. For many mainstream historians, it was an elaborate hoax, perhaps crafted by a homesick immigrant with knowledge of runes, a clever forgery meant to connect the new world to the old in a dramatic way. But proponents of its authenticity have never surrendered. They point to the sheer difficulty of such a forgery, asking how a simple farmer could have possessed such specific, if flawed, linguistic knowledge. They highlight other potential Norse artifacts found in the region, like the so-called mooring stone, a rock with a hole that could have been used to secure a boat. The Kensington Runestone is more than just a rock. It is a symbol of a much larger historical argument. It represents the enduring question of pre-Columbian contact, forcing us to ask how many explorers' tales have been lost to time. Is it a genuine message from a lost band of adventurers, or a beautifully crafted piece of fiction carved into stone? The stone itself offers no definitive verdict, only a cryptic story that continues to divide experts and captivate anyone who wonders what secrets might still lie buried just beneath the surface of our accepted history. Beneath the waves off the coast of Japan, a different kind of mystery lies submerged in silent grandeur. In 1986, a local diver exploring the waters near Yonaguni Island came across something that defied the usual seascape of coral and rock. He found massive, monolithic structures, a complex of what appeared to be giant terraces, sharp right angles, and a colossal stepped pyramid that rose from the seafloor. This is the Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling sandstone formation that looks for all the world like the ruins of a sunken city. The sheer scale is breathtaking, with the main structure stretching nearly 500 feet long and rising over 80 feet high. Its features are geometrically precise, with flat platforms, straight walls that meet at perfect 90-degree angles, and what appear to be wide, ceremonial staircases. For marine geologist Masaki Kimura, who has spent decades studying the site, this is no random act of nature. He argues that the monument is clearly man-made, the work of a sophisticated, ancient civilization that built this complex when the sea levels were much lower, over 10,000 years ago. He points to specific features that seem engineered, like two tall, pillar-like stones that appear to support a massive roof slab, and a trench that encircles the entire structure, something not easily explained by natural erosion alone. This theory connects to a powerful legend, the myth of a lost Pacific continent called Mu, a kind of Asian Atlantis swallowed by the ocean. Could Yonaguni be a surviving piece of that sunken world? The alternative explanation is just as compelling, though far less mystical. Geologists who oppose the artificial origin theory note that the sandstone in this region is naturally fractured along parallel planes. They argue that the powerful currents, tectonic activity, and relentless erosion in the sea can perfectly mimic human construction, creating flat surfaces, sharp edges, and even what look like stair steps through entirely natural processes. They ask a simple, practical question. If this was a bustling complex, where are the artifacts? No pottery shards, no stone tools, no burial remains have ever been recovered from the site to prove human habitation. The debate over Yonaguni is a clash of perspectives, a question of whether we are seeing a pattern where none exists, or recognizing the ghost of a civilization we have yet to acknowledge. The monument sits in a profound silence, its true origins locked away by the rising seas. It forces us to wonder how much of human history is not buried in the earth, but lost beneath the waves, waiting for the tides to one day reveal their secrets. The silent stones of Yonaguni are not the only ancient texts that speak of wonders in the sky. An Egyptologist in the 1930s was transcribing a text that would become one of the most debated documents in historical mysteries. This was the Tulli Papyrus, said to be a copy of a much older record from the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III around 1480 years before the Common Era. The text describes a startling event, a circle of fire that appeared in the southern sky. It was brighter than the sun and measured about 5 meters in diameter. It had no head, it made no sound, and its breath was foul. The account continues, noting that after several days, these objects, these fiery disks, became more numerous than ever, shining in the sky. The scribe recorded that they finally rose up and flew away toward the south, leaving the royal court in a state of confusion and awe. This is not a story from a science fiction novel, but a purported record from one of the most organized and meticulous civilizations of the ancient world. The immediate and obvious interpretation for many is that this is a clear account of an unidentified flying object sighting, a fleet of advanced craft witnessed and documented thousands of years before the term was ever coined. The papyrus seems to describe structured vehicles, not just a meteor or a comet, with specific details about their appearance, movement, and sheer number. It is a cornerstone of the ancient astronaut theory, suggesting that our ancestors were not just building pyramids, but were also looking up at technologies they could not comprehend. Yet the entire case rests on a profound and frustrating absence. The original papyrus has been lost. The text we have today comes from a copy made by the Egyptologist who saw it, and even that primary copy has vanished from public view. This means that modern scholars cannot perform any physical analysis on the papyrus itself to verify its age. its ink, or its provenance. Without the original artifact, the Tulli Papyrus exists in a kind of historical limbo. Mainstream Egyptologists and linguists argue that the language used in the transcribed text contains anomalies and phrases that are not consistent with other known Egyptian documents from that period. They suggest the description could be a poetic or religious account of a rare atmospheric phenomenon, perhaps a particularly dramatic solar halo or a swarm of meteors fragmenting in the atmosphere. The foul breath could be the smell of ozone after a lightning strike, and the brilliant, silent circles could be sundogs, bright spots that sometimes appear beside the sun. So where does that leave us? The Tulli Papyrus is a ghost of an artifact, a story about a story. Its power lies not in its physical proof, but in the fundamental question it forces us to confront. When ancient cultures recorded events that defied their understanding, how did they choose to describe them? Did they reach for the language of gods and demons, or did they simply write down what they saw as faithfully as they could? This single, unverifiable text blurs the line between myth and observation, challenging us to decide if our ancestors were witnessing divine miracles, natural wonders, or something else entirely, something that flew in the face of their entire world. Deep within the crypt of an Egyptian temple at Dendera, a stone wall tells a story that looks strangely out of place. Carved into the sandstone is a relief showing a massive, elongated object, shaped like a light bulb, with a sinuous snake stretched along its interior. At its base, a figure kneels while a baboon god holds two knives aloft, all connected by cables to what appears to be an energy source. This is the Dendera Light, a set of images from around 100 years before the Common Era that has become a flashpoint for one of archaeology's most heated debates. To the modern eye, the resemblance to electrical technology is uncanny. The bulbous object, the filament-like snake, the cable, and the supporting box all seem to depict a functioning device, a lamp powered by some form of ancient electricity. Proponents of this theory connect it directly to artifacts like the Baghdad Battery, suggesting the Egyptians possessed not just the power source, but the application, using it to illuminate the dark, sacred passages of their temples where soot from torches would have been forbidden. The intricate details of the carving, from the precise posture of the figures to the clear lines of the cable, fuel the idea that this was a literal blueprint for a lost technology. Yet, Egyptologists offer a completely different and deeply symbolic interpretation. They identify the scene as a classic representation of a foundational creation myth. The bulb is not a light bulb, but the womb of the sky goddess Nut, from which the sun god is born each morning. The snake is not a filament, but the god Harsomptis, a manifestation of the rising sun, emerging from the lotus flower that symbolizes creation. The entire tableau is a spiritual diagram explaining the cosmic cycle of rebirth and the dawn of a new day, not the operation of an electrical appliance. So who is right? The relief itself provides no technical manual, only a beautifully carved puzzle. This is the core of the mystery, a clash between symbolic and literal interpretation. Do we see a light bulb because we are creatures of our own time, projecting our technology onto a sacred text? Or does the striking specificity of the image hint that the myth was a way of describing a real and now forgotten scientific principle? The Dendera Light does not give us answers, but it illuminates a profound question about how we read the past. Are we looking at ancient poetry, or are we staring at a forgotten instruction manual, its meaning forever lost in translation? The ruins of Mohenjo-Daro present a scene of ancient devastation that is difficult to explain. In one particular district of this meticulously planned city, archaeologists found something deeply unsettling. Scattered across a central street were human skeletons, contorted in poses of sudden, agonizing death, as if they had been struck down in an instant. The surrounding brick structures showed signs of an intense, concentrated heat so extreme that it had actually melted the surface of the clay, a process known as vitrification. To achieve this effect, temperatures would need to reach well over 1,000 degrees Celsius, a heat far beyond that of a normal house fire. This strange combination of instant death and localized stone melting heat has led to a radical and chilling theory. Could the people of Mohenjo-Daro have been the victims of an ancient, catastrophic event that resembles a nuclear explosion? Proponents of this idea point to the vitrified rubble and the skeletons, which show no signs of weapon trauma, only sudden death. They suggest the epicenter of the blast was precisely in this area, and they even reference ancient Indian texts like the Mahabharata, which describe weapons of terrifying power, blazing like fire but without smoke, capable of leveling entire cities. The logical counterargument is far less dramatic but more widely accepted by mainstream science. The vitrification, experts argue, could have been caused by a massive, sustained industrial fire, perhaps from a pottery kiln district that burned out of control. The skeletons could simply be the result of a massacre or a plague, with the bodies left unburied in the chaos. Yet, the sheer intensity of the heat required continues to fuel the debate. If it was just a fire, why did it melt the very bricks of the buildings? The mystery of Mohenjo-Daro forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge about early urban collapse. We know the great Indus Valley civilization eventually declined, but the causes remain a subject of speculation. This site presents a stark, physical question baked into its very bricks. Did this city, one of the world's earliest and most advanced, fall to a mundane disaster, or could it bear the scars of a forgotten conflict fought with weapons we would not rediscover for another 4,000 years? Gold gleams with a secret form in the museums of Colombia. These are the Quimbaya Artifacts, a stunning collection of small, intricate objects crafted by a sophisticated culture that thrived over 1,000 years ago. Among the many zoomorphic figures of frogs, lizards, and birds, a specific group stands out with a shape that feels jarringly out of time. They possess what look unmistakably like delta wings, perfectly swept back as if for supersonic flight. Some have a distinct fuselage, a central body, and most strikingly, vertical tail fins that serve no obvious purpose for a creature that walks or swims. To the modern eye, they are miniature golden airplanes. The so-called Quimbaya airplanes have become a flashpoint in the debate over ancient knowledge. For those who see them as evidence of lost technology, these are not mere trinkets. They are scale models, representations of real flying machines that must have existed, their aerodynamic principles understood and captured in metal by a culture that witnessed advanced aviation. How else, they ask, could such precise features appear by accident? The mainstream archaeological perspective offers a more grounded, yet equally fascinating explanation. Experts point out that the Quimbaya were master metalworkers, celebrated for their creative and highly stylized art. They argue these objects are brilliant abstractions of the natural world. The delta wings could be the stylized shells of certain beetles or the flattened bodies of stingrays. The tail fin might represent the tail of a bird or a fish, exaggerated for artistic and symbolic effect. This is the core of the mystery, a perfect storm of art and interpretation. Are we seeing a forgotten chapter of aviation, or are we projecting our own technological world onto the creative expressions of an ancient people? The artifacts themselves are silent, their true inspiration locked within the minds of the artisans who shaped them. They force us to confront a powerful tendency, the human instinct to find familiar patterns in the unfamiliar, to see our own reflection in the shimmering gold of a distant past. The ground in New Hampshire yielded another kind of puzzle in 1872, one that fit neatly in the palm of a hand but carried the weight of an unsolved century. A worker digging a post hole unearthed a perfectly smooth, dark, egg-shaped stone unlike any ordinary rock. This was the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, a dense piece of polished quartzite that was clearly no accident of nature. Its surface is a canvas of intricate, precise carvings that only deepen the mystery. On one side, you see a face with serene, almost otherworldly features. On the other, a teepee, an ear of corn, a star, and a series of spirals. Most baffling of all are the two perfectly cylindrical holes drilled straight through the stone from top to bottom. Each bore so smooth and uniform that it suggests the use of advanced tools far beyond simple hand carving. The holes are tapered, impossibly precise, and show no signs of the crude drilling methods associated with any known local cultures from the era it is presumed to belong to. So who made this and why? The symbols themselves offer conflicting clues. The teepee and corn point toward Native American origins, yet the style of the face and the spiral motifs do not match any known tribal art from the region. The stone's unique form and craftsmanship have led to theories that stretch across the ocean. Could it be a Celtic artifact left behind by pre-Columbian voyagers from Europe? Or perhaps a ceremonial object from a completely unknown, isolated culture that has since vanished from the area, leaving this single, cryptic token behind? The stone's purpose is as mysterious as its maker. Some speculate it was a kind of standard weight or measure, given its consistent shape. Others believe it was a powerful spiritual talisman, its holes perhaps meant to channel energy or to align with celestial bodies during specific rituals. The true message of the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone remains locked in its silent symbols. It does not shout of lost civilizations or advanced technology, but it whispers of a different kind of enigma, the story of a single artisan or a small community whose identity and beliefs have been completely erased by time. This small, polished stone stands as a quiet, stubborn reminder that history is filled with countless such puzzles, personal and profound, that may never find their answers. A farmer's simple discovery in the Bolivian highlands unearthed an object that should not exist. In the 1950s, while working the land near Lake Titicaca, a man stumbled upon a large, ornate ceramic bowl, now known as the Fuente Magna. The vessel itself was intriguing, but its true mystery was etched into its surface. The interior was covered in a complex script, a form of writing that bore a startling resemblance to ancient Sumerian cuneiform, the wedge-shaped symbols used in Mesopotamia thousands of years ago. Yet this was not the Middle East, this was South America. The bowl also featured local zoomorphic carvings, creating a jarring blend of two worlds that were never supposed to have met. How could the writing of a civilization from the other side of the globe appear on a ceremonial bowl in the Andes? The implications are staggering. If the bowl is genuine, and it has been dated by some researchers to around 2,000 years before the Common Era, it suggests that Sumerian explorers or traders somehow crossed the vast Atlantic Ocean, establishing contact with pre-Columbian cultures millennia before Columbus. This single artifact challenges the core of the isolationist view of history, which holds that the civilizations of the Old World and the New World developed in complete separation. The inscriptions are the heart of the debate. Some epigraphers claim to have translated portions of the text, identifying it as a Proto-Sumerian script used for religious dedications. They see it as a prayer bowl, a sacred object used in rituals, its very creation a fusion of Mesopotamian language and Andean artistry. This would mean that the story of human exploration is far older and more interconnected than our textbooks dare to suggest. The skeptics, however, are unwavering. They dismiss the Fuente Magna as an elaborate hoax, a modern forgery crafted to deceive. They point to the lack of any other similar finds in the region and question the circumstances of its discovery. Could a local artisan with knowledge of cuneiform have created it? The debate rages precisely because the stakes are so high. The bowl does not whisper of lost technology, but of lost journeys. It asks us to reconsider the map of the ancient world. Were the oceans true barriers, or were they highways for intrepid, forgotten voyagers? The Fuente Magna bowl sits as a silent, ceramic witness, its mixed symbols a permanent question about who we were and how far we really roamed in the deep past. Far beneath the Austrian earth in 1885, a miner's pick struck something far harder than coal. Buried deep within a seam dating to the Tertiary period was a strange, cuboid object, a lump of metal that seemed to have no business being there. This is the Wolfsegg Iron, a heavy, almost cube-shaped artifact with a distinct groove running around its center and a composition of solid iron and nickel. Initially, scientists believed it was a meteorite, a simple piece of space rock that had fallen to Earth in the distant past. But its geometric shape and that peculiar, manufactured-looking groove challenged that simple explanation. How could a natural meteorite possess such a regular, almost tool-like form? The coal seam that encased it was over 20 million years old, from an era long before any human civilization could have forged metal. This single fact opened the door to breathtaking possibilities. Could this object be evidence of a prehistoric industrial culture, one that rose and fell millions of years before our own? Or does its otherworldly composition hint at something even more fantastic, a piece of machinery left behind by ancient extraterrestrial visitors? The most grounded theory insists it is merely a piece of industrial debris from the 19th century itself, perhaps a cast iron counterweight from mining equipment that somehow became lodged in the coal and was mistaken for a much older find. The process of concretion can make modern objects appear ancient, yet the circumstances of its discovery, embedded so firmly within that ancient coal bed, continue to resist a simple dismissal. The Wolfsegg Iron presents a fundamental puzzle about how we distinguish the natural from the artificial. It asks us how a seemingly man-made object could be sealed in a chapter of Earth's history written for giants of a forgotten age, a silent, metallic question waiting in the dark for an answer. A stone disc from Nepal tells a story many are eager to believe. This is the Lolladoff Plate, an artifact that has become a legend within ufology circles, often presented as definitive proof of ancient alien visitations. The plate itself is a flat, circular stone, its surface carved with a spiral groove that swirls outward from the center. Along this spiral path, you can see a series of figures. Most prominent is a large, disc-shaped object that looks undeniably like a classic flying saucer. Next to it stands a humanoid figure with a large, hairless head, slender limbs, and oversized, almond-shaped eyes, a being that perfectly matches the modern description of a gray alien. The entire scene is framed by other, smaller figures that some interpret as a shaman or a witness to this otherworldly encounter. The narrative attached to the plate is compelling, claiming it was discovered in Nepal by a Polish professor named Lolladoff and is thousands of years old, a relic from a pre-human civilization that interacted with star travelers. The visual impact is immediate and powerful, seeming to connect the dots between ancient art and contemporary UFO lore. Yet, when you search for any archaeological record of this object, you find nothing but a profound silence. There are no peer-reviewed papers, no museum catalog entries, no verified carbon dating reports. The plate has no credible provenance, no chain of custody that can be traced back to a legitimate dig site. Most researchers in the mainstream consider it a modern artistic creation, perhaps from the mid-20th century, crafted to capitalize on the growing fascination with flying saucers and ancient astronauts. The materials and carving techniques have never been professionally analyzed in a way that would confirm its supposed ancient age. So why has this object, with such flimsy credentials, captured the global imagination and spread so widely through books, documentaries, and online forums? The power of the Lolladoff Plate lies not in its historical truth, but in its potent symbolism. It perfectly mirrors our modern mythologies, providing a tangible, physical anchor for a deeply held cultural desire, the hope that we are not alone and that our ancestors were witness to wonders. It represents the psychology of mystery itself, where an object's ability to confirm a beloved narrative often outweighs the mundane need for verifiable facts. We are drawn to these artifacts because they offer a more exciting, more mysterious world than the one presented by conventional history. They allow us to feel that we are privy to a hidden truth, a secret history that bypasses the gatekeepers of academia. The Lolladoff Plate, whether a conscious hoax or a piece of folk art, serves as a perfect case study in how a compelling image can eclipse a lack of evidence, proving that sometimes the most powerful artifact is not the object itself, but the story we are so desperate to attach to it. The artistic expression of the Ubaid culture presents a gallery of figures that are both human and profoundly other. In museums housing artifacts from ancient Mesopotamia, you can find statues from the Ubaid period, dating back 7,000 years, that depict humanoid forms with unmistakably reptilian characteristics. These are the Ubaid Lizardmen, terracotta figurines with elongated, cone-shaped heads, slitted almond-shaped eyes, and bodies that often seem to blend human posture with a lizard-like anatomy. Some of the figures are clearly female, often depicted holding infants who share the same unusual features, while others assume postures that are both ritualistic and unsettlingly alien to the modern eye. Mainstream archaeology provides a grounded interpretation for these creations. Scholars see them as powerful examples of early symbolic art, likely representing deities or shamanic figures within a fertility cult. The exaggerated features, they argue, are a form of stylization, meant to convey otherworldly power and a connection to the natural world, perhaps to creatures like the lizard which were seen as symbols of regeneration. The art of this period is diverse, and these figurines fit into a broader tradition of exploring hybrid forms that bridge the human and the animal. Yet, the sheer consistency and specificity of the reptilian motifs have fueled alternative theories for decades. Could these statues be more than symbolic imagination? Some researchers point to the precise anatomical details, questioning whether they could be rooted in a cultural memory of a non-human species, an unknown branch of the human family tree that has since vanished from the fossil record. The more radical interpretation suggests these are literal representations of extraterrestrial visitors, ancient astronauts whose unusual appearance was faithfully recorded in clay by the awestruck people who encountered them. This idea, while far outside conventional scholarship, taps into a deep-seated curiosity about our origins. What truly inspired these unique creations? The Ubaid Lizardmen do not offer a simple answer. They stand as a testament to the profound and complex inner world of some of humanity's earliest settled societies. Their silent, sloping forms challenge us to decipher the language of ancient belief, a language where the line between a spiritual metaphor and a historical record becomes beautifully and permanently blurred. High on a desolate mountain in China's Qinghai province, a collection of rust-colored pipes emerges from the stone itself. These are the Baigong Pipes, a network of metallic tubes embedded in rock formations that geologists date to millions of years in the past. They are not scattered randomly. Tubes of various diameters, some as thin as a toothpick and others much wider, run in what appears to be a deliberate arrangement, some leading directly into a nearby saltwater lake, while others penetrate a strange, pyramid-like structure that towers over the arid landscape. Scientific analysis confirms the pipes are composed primarily of iron, with significant amounts of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide, a metallic composition that stands in stark contrast to the ancient rock that holds them. The immediate scientific explanation points to a fascinating natural process. Geologists propose these are the fossilized remnants of ancient tree roots. Over immense spans of time, the organic material of the roots can be replaced by minerals carried in groundwater, a process called petrifaction, leaving behind these pipe-like casts of iron oxide and other minerals. The arrangement could be a simple, if spectacular, coincidence of nature, yet the very precision of some tubes, their seemingly systematic placement, and their connection to both a pyramidal form and a lake fuel an entirely different line of thought. Could these be the crumbling infrastructure of a civilization so ancient its very memory has been erased by geological time? The suggestion is that they might have served as a form of plumbing, channeling water from the lake, or perhaps even as conduits for a more mysterious form of energy. The location itself deepens the enigma, a remote and inhospitable place that seems an unlikely spot for either a natural fluke or a human settlement. This mystery forces a direct confrontation between two ways of seeing the world. Do we attribute these strange forms to the slow, patient, and often surprisingly artistic hand of geology, or do we see in them the ghost of a blueprint, the decaying signature of an intelligence that existed when the world was young? The Baigong Pipes do not offer an answer, but they stand as a powerful, rusting question, challenging us to decide where the line between a natural wonder and a manufactured artifact truly lies. These remarkable objects do not exist in a vacuum. They land directly in the middle of a deeply entrenched debate about how we uncover and interpret the past. The very discipline of archaeology is built on a foundation of careful methodology, relying on principles like stratigraphy, the study of rock layers, and techniques like carbon dating to place objects within a reliable timeline. When an artifact is found, experts also look for cultural context, searching for similar objects, written records, or other clues that can explain its purpose and origin. This system works beautifully for the vast majority of finds, building a coherent and gradual story of human progress. But what happens when an object like the London Hammer or the Aiud Wedge appears? It shatters that coherent narrative. These are what researchers call OOP arts, out-of-place artifacts, and they are the ultimate outliers. They do not fit. They arrive without context, without precedent, and they challenge the entire established order. This creates an inevitable and often fierce tension. On one side, mainstream institutions, like the Smithsonian, uphold rigorous standards that demand extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims. An object that contradicts known history is often initially assumed to be a hoax, a misidentification, or an example of contamination, because that is the simplest and most scientifically cautious explanation. On the other side are thinkers and researchers like Graham Hancock, who argue that this very caution has blinded us to a much grander and much older human story. They propose that many OOP arts are the scattered wreckage of a lost global civilization, a sophisticated culture wiped out by a cataclysm at the end of the last ice age, its survivors passing down fragments of knowledge that became the seeds of later empires. This is not a debate with easy answers. It is a fundamental clash between two ways of knowing. One demands evidence that fits within an existing framework, while the other suggests the framework itself is flawed. How do we balance the essential skepticism of good science with the open-minded curiosity required for true discovery? This is the central drama playing out behind every one of these mysterious objects. They force us to ask not just what they are, but who we are as a species, and whether the story we tell ourselves about our own journey is complete, or if we are still missing the most important chapters.